Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Help with Natalie Cuomo. I'm here today with comedian Erica Spera. How are ya?
Hello, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thanks for coming in. I'm so out of it today.
Yeah?
I really am. I was just watching your set on the Late Late Show with James Corden. It's so good.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, that was what, 4 months ago?
Yeah, I filmed it November, like right before Thanksgiving. Yeah,
That's
so
awesome.
4 months.
What was that like? That's so cool.
It honestly was. I was surprised how calm I was that day, and then also on the set.
Yeah,
Because it's so tedious to get those things, especially, primetime cable has so many restrictions of what you can say, can't say. We have this sponsor. You can't do a joke about flying. You can't do a joke about this, right? So the process takes forever. And then you get there, and they're like, yeah, just have fun up there. They're like, happy to have you. Hang out. We got snacks in the room. Like, it's so relaxed. And I think it's also, they know how nerve-wracking it can be when it's your first one.
right.
And basically they're like, you did the work. You did the hard part. You're here. Everybody wants it to go well. We want you to have a good time. So it was really great.
How far after filming it did you see the final product?
So I filmed it. They filmed 2 in the day that I was there. There was a band on the first one. I was the comedian on the second one. It aired the next day.
Oh, whoa.
So, right. But it kind of is a weird anxious thing of everyone texts you that knew you filmed it. Like, how'd it go?
Yeah.
And it's a kind of a blur. And you're also not as close to the audience physically as you are at a comedy show.
Oh, really?
So, right. Yeah. So you're a little like, you slightly feel a little disconnected. And also those audiences are trained to clap a lot. So when I filmed it, when I walked away, I felt like they clapped more than they laughed. And then comedically that gets you in your head of like, but was it funny?
Yes, no, I
You
think
know?
they think clapping. I feel like when I get a clap, I'm like, all right, they thought it was so funny that the mouth wasn't enough.
Right. Or it's just, I mean, if you're the phrase like clap comedy.
Yeah.
So it's more that being like, that wasn't clap comedy, right?
Right.
That wasn't the thing like women should have control of their bodies. And everyone's like, yes, agree. Like shit like that is what you're like, ah.
Yeah.
Or we've all seen late night sets that there's a lot of clapping, 0 laughing. And you can tell it's like, because the comedian just took a pause.
Right.
That it's, like I said, there can be like a disconnect. And it really is. It's an amazing opportunity. I'm so happy I did it. And I had a great time. And I'm very happy with the set. But going through the process and then doing it made me more be like, man, the times I talk shit about other comedian sets, I'm like, I don't think it was their fault. Like, it really wasn't their fault. Like, and I've seen comics that I respect and think are great comics also have a bad late night set.
Yeah.
So I think that's the more nerve-wracking thing is you're like, I just want it to come out good.
Yeah.
Even if I get nothing out of it, it's just, you're going to promote it. It's the one thing everyone's going to look up to watch your comedy. And for me, it kind of was my first putting my material out there where you can go look it up.
Right.
I hadn't gotten like into the clip game yet, really.
How much stand-up do you post like for clips?
So for a while, I was trying to do 1 clip a week. But then with the podcasting world, you got to do the clips of the podcast. And I got behind. And that's just another thing on the to-do list of I have all these tapes that are great tapes. And I just need to make myself sit and watch myself, which is kind of brutal. But you got to make yourself do it and put stuff out there. That's the game now. So you can't avoid it.
How important do you feel like we were just talking about, like outsourcing the work? I think it's such good advice to just like learn how to trust other people and also to know like, oh, I have the skill to do this myself, but I do need like mental space to write and be funny in the first place.
Yeah, like hilarious if I was talking to Jordan Fisher is a good comic and friend of mine. And I was talking to him about seeing people blow up, whether it's through social media, through Netflix special, whatever, and they are constantly touring. And they're touring Wednesday through Sunday, selling out theaters, all this stuff. And I said to him, I was like, I don't know if I would want to be traveling and working that much. And the main reason why was just because of all the shit I have to do every day.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize in that scenario that, oh no, if I'm at that level, Erica, everything else will be outsourced. You won't have to lift a finger to do the watch the set, pick the clip, all this stuff. It's like, oh, you become I get to show up, be the talent, be the creative, and let everybody else do that part. And that's like, now I'm like, oh yeah, now that's really the dream, is just outsource anything you can. And that's, I know you talk advice on this pod, but that's definitely some of the best advice I've gotten was, one, look at your weaknesses, what your weakness is, and outsource that. Find someone who's better at doing it. But in general, just like outsource as much as you can. If you can afford to do it, because the load of the work is so much lighter. And I have been feeling a big creative rut with writing new material.
Yeah.
And it's because I'm burnt out of all the work I'm doing during the day and then the shows I do at night.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a thing of what's priority, where can you cut back, what things can you take breaks from. But as a comic, it kills you to be like taking nights off from shows.
Yes, 100%. And especially when you're on social media, there's always that thought like, I should be creating more. And you have the content, but you just have to like turn it into that form. Yeah,
and you're very good at that. You consistently upload.
I do. I'm like always making clips.
Yeah.
But it's funny. So I used to make all of Dan's clips, and
stop doing that.
I did stop. And then I was like, you know what, Dan? I think it's time. I'm gonna pass the torch. And he started making them, and he's like, wow, Natalie, this is harder than I thought it is. I'm like,
dude.
Yes, it takes so much time, but it was validating because I don't know. I don't talk to that many people. So I'm just like, oh, someone else. Yeah, this is crazy, right? Like it takes forever. So, yeah.
But this is my theory of why men in general tend to be more successful than women is they outsource more.
Yeah.
And funny, they often outsource to women.
Yeah.
Like Dan did to you. They're like, well, women will get it done. They know how to do it right. They care.
Yes.
And they are just better at fully giving up control. He fully was like, pick the clip, edit the thing. I bet if there was a typo, he was like, it's fine. Like they just don't care as much. And then it makes them be able to put so much time and energy into other things.
Into writing, into just like, you don't even realize when you're staring at a computer or your brain is thinking that way that like, it's just not working in the same creative way. Like I felt a lot happier lately, just kind of relaxing around social media and the pressure to like always be making something.
Yeah, because you do a podcast, it's weekly, right?
Yeah.
And there is something to consistency of when someone's a fan of being like, this comes out every Monday.
Yeah.
And I've had my slip ups of I just had too much and then I was 3 days late on the episode, or I just skipped a week once and I didn't have any sponsors that week, so it was like, fuck it. And I just added an intro of like, yeah, guys, things got too hectic. It's late, but here's the episode, right? And I was actually very surprised at how supportive people were. Like that is what's nice about today's age. Everyone's like, hey, yeah, your mental state. And it's like, I didn't have a mental breakdown. I just literally did not have the time to get it done.
So your podcast, you have two, Shooters Gotta Shoot and Finding Mr. Height.
Yes. So Finding Mr. Hyde, I just joined a couple months ago.
Okay.
It was a buddy of mine, Allie. So she started that with someone else. Her co-host left. So then I joined forces. And then I have Shooters Gotta Shoot, which is, in general, a dating relationship podcast, but I've made it more comedy, having comedians on, more telling stories than, like, I guess, informational.
Yeah.
Because I used to do a lot of research, and then I was like, I've read every fucking dating book.
Really?
There is. Oh, God, dude.
So what would you just like read research on dating books and kind of share it? Or
yeah, like basically the concept when I started it with my co-host Molly, she no longer does the show because she's very successful in other parts of her life. So good for her. We're still great friends. We basically were like the books and the advice and all this stuff that you almost feel embarrassed to like buy and try and read it. It's like, we'll do that for you and then talk about it on the show and actually try methods from it, which a lot of it actually has been helpful. But you hit a point where you're just like, if I hear one more piece of fucking dating advice, I'm going to scream.
What was the solid dating advice that you took away from it?
Ooh. I'm like, there's a few things that I think I try to do now. One big one is trying to give everybody a second date.
Huh.
And it comes from a fuck the spark theory. It's this woman, Logan Ury, who works for Hinge, and she was in data and relationship science. And part of this theory, though, too, is like a lot of people that are great people are not great on a first date.
Yeah.
And not in the sense that, they're rude and, talk over you and whatever. It's more like, a lot of people take a minute to warm up and feel comfortable. Or a common thing a lot of women do is if you're nervous on a first date, you'll talk a lot.
Really?
Yeah, that's something
I thought that was a man thing.
I guess it's both.
Yeah.
A little bit. But it's like I've been on dates with guys. I kept feeling like they were just trying to get me to talk. Oh. It'd be like anytime you throw it to them, they're maybe like, and what about this? And I'm like, no, you talk too. I want to get to know you too, right?
Yeah.
And that could also be a nervous thing where it's like, oh, I think she's having fun, right? A lot of us are in our head on a first date and not, fully feeling whatever vibe. But it's more, in every study I've looked at, it's like, relationships that have that big, huge spark at the beginning are less likely to work out than the gradual build, and you're getting more and more interested in them as it moves on.
Why is that?
I think because a lot of times sparky people are actually not great people.
Really?
Yeah. Like the person that is that super charismatic, you feel like amazing on the date. And a lot of times those people are, one, narcissistic.
Yeah.
Two, they just want you to like them. It's not at all really about your connection. But essentially, I think it's just deeper if, whether you felt the spark on the first date or you didn't, if you feel like every time you see them, it's growing more and more and more attraction. And one example, too, is if you looked at arranged marriages, there's like no connection really when they start and they work out. And there's this thing of like learning to love someone. And I don't know, I think taking it slow. I think maybe that's more of a part of it. It's just the taking it slow, not rushing into anything.
Wow. I've never in my life
Yeah.
done that. I mean, that's never, that's like the opposite of my life.
I realized as I was saying all that, I was like, Natalie might think I'm knocking her.
No, I
that's
don't.
Not what I mean.
I don't. Like, I've heard other people say this advice, obviously.
Yeah, but it's just a thing I try to do.
Yeah.
I actually just had a date this past weekend. We did like a coffee, casual, and I left, and all I felt that was negative is I felt he was a little stiff.
Huh.
But I'm like, look, it's the middle of the day. It's a first time meeting. It's online. I couldn't think of any real deal breakers of our conversation or of the connection, or even I did find him attractive.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, he asked me on a second date. I'll go on that second date. Like, what am I really losing in that sense?
Time.
Right. And I'm hoping the next date, maybe we'll go out at night, be a little more loose.
Yeah.
But it was like, young you is very like, ugh, the ick. And like so quick to be like the ick.
Right.
And a lot of times icks, it's like, that has nothing to do with who the person is.
Yeah.
Like, we all have weird or annoying things.
It takes a long time to get to know someone. Like, that's, as someone that every relationship I've been in has been like, fireworks. Do you know what I'm saying? And I feel like getting to know someone, I have realized that even if you do feel that like big spark at the beginning and it gets serious, it does take you the same amount of time to actually get to know the person.
Yeah.
Like,
what is it? Like honeymoon phase fades about 6 months, they say?
Yeah.
Or like if someone's putting up a facade of some type of, you feel like you're not being yourself, you can only keep it up like 3 months.
Right.
And so after 3 months is when like that mask comes off. And then 6 months-ish is when the honeymoon phase dies a bit.
It's interesting because like a problem that I used to have is like I would like fall in love with someone before I knew them.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I would be like, and then you realize who they are, but you're stuck because you feel emotionally attached. You feel like you've given all this stuff. Like in my past relationships, I've definitely had moments where I was like, wow, I feel emotionally attached and I know that this is not right for me.
Yeah. Or have you ever heard of sunk cost fallacy?
No, tell me.
So it's like somewhat business, but they made it in dating. Is like the prime example is you're dating someone, you're living together. Let's say you've been together 3 years and there's no, let's say, engagement. And one person wants an engagement to happen. However, things are going on in the relationship that are not good. There's clearly big red flags, clearly a lot of things wrong. And it's not really the right match for them. Mm-hmm. The sunk cost fallacy is sitting there being like, I've already put 3 years into this. I've already put so much work into this. And the thought of losing that is like, it outweighs you essentially being like, but is this even the right person for me? And a lot of people get stuck in that. Men, women, whoever. And especially, you had living together. That's tough in general to get out of. But it's like that and the combo of, ooh, I got to get back out there.
Right.
Which is why, like, a lot of people don't leave a relationship till they're like, oh, who's this in my DMs?
Yeah, and you always think that someone's like a bad person for doing that, but you have to remember that they were done with the relationship when that started? Like, I feel like probably.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, a lot of times people just need a reason to leave.
yeah.
And so just the commitment part, I've seen people change what they want because of that sunk cost fallacy.
Right.
Where they're suddenly like, actually, I mean, I don't really care if we ever get married. Like, we live together and, they're great to me and da-da-da-da. And it's like, no, at the end of the day, you want to get married. And you're compromising on that.
Right.
Which is your choice to do. But I just hate when I hear women especially just be like, well, we've been together a long time. It's like, this man, he has a Hinge profile and says he's just looking at other women for fun.
Right.
What more reasons do you need that this guy is not, the one for you or not committing to you in the way that you want, let's say?
Yeah. I feel like do you feel like people recover from cheating in relationships?
I mean, I don't think I could be one of those people.
I mean, I could not either.
I really commend people who can, because the part we don't talk about is like, hey, if you choose to forgive, right? It's always the debate of, should you forgive? Should you not? It's like, okay, if you choose to, are you really going to let it go? Or are you going to hold that over their head forever?
Yeah.
Because if I was the one that cheated and say I got forgiven, I would not have a long time frame of like, how long are you going to hold this over my head?
Yeah.
Like, what else do I have to do to prove to you? It's like when you apologize to somebody for anything, right, and they're still mad. You're like, look, that was a sincere apology. I really feel bad. I'm not going to make this up to you the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Like, we really, truly have to move on. So that's the part that I'm like, when I see people do that, I kind of give them kudos. Even though I would not stay with someone. But like I said, I've never been married with children. I don't know what that's like to be with someone 10 years. We have a life. And it's like, hey, there's other people now involved in this. That would I at least try? I think if I had kids with someone, I would.
Right.
I do think I would. I would try, especially a one-time.
Ugh, that's so hard.
Right. At all. It would be hard as hell. We'd be in therapy daily or whatever. But I think if I had kids, I would try. I do think so. That being said, that's not an invitation to cheat on me. Whoever's listening to this is not an invitation. It's more I try to not judge people either way.
Have you come across advice for people that are able to come back from things like that?
Come back from like cheating or just
yeah, I mean
I think it's just all I said is like you really have to work to get over it and let it go and let whatever trust build back up, because it could be something that's not even cheating. There's the story of someone gambled the savings away that you built together,
right? And
it's like, okay, are you gonna forgive them? Are you gonna now treat them like a child? Like, with anything in any relationship, it's like really loving someone really is having empathy and understanding their side and their situation. And it's not about being right, where a lot of times we pose these scenarios of, oh, if you got cheated on, and fuck that guy and blah, 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 which is also why I think with relationships, you have to really be careful of what you tell other people in your life.
Yeah. Especially
in-laws or your own parents. I come from a very close family, but it's the thing of like, if I tell my mom about a fight we had, we'll resolve the fight, she'll still be mad.
I know, yeah.
So it's like that line of, you don't really want to be bad-mouthing your partner to people, but at the same time, it's like, if you're hiding a lot from people, probably not a great relationship either.
Yes, yeah.
So, but I think it's like, things that are between you as a couple, often it's like you should keep that between the two of you. And a cheating thing, I feel like if I told my family about a cheating thing, they would not be. Yeah, that's something that forgiving. You couldn't forgive. A family wouldn't really forgive. It would take them longer than it would take me, probably. Yeah, at least outwardly. Yeah.
Interesting.
And it just puts an extra pressure or an extra person really that doesn't trust my partner, and they feel they have to prove themselves too.
Right.
So. Yeah, but I'm like, I don't know. That's a tough one.
Do you feel like those conversations in the beginning of a relationship like are bad, oversharing about your past?
I think that's something that goes with the building as it takes time, because obviously everybody has some type of trauma from past people, and that trauma obviously varies in degree. And I think things naturally kind of come up because no one wants to be trauma dumped on.
Right.
Like, you know, one of the big things on a date is I've had people ask me like, oh, when was your last relationship and how did it end? And it kind of is a test of like, one, are you over it?
Yeah.
That you really don't care about it anymore. But two, it's like, yeah, have you just put it away? Are you still resenting anything? And, you know, the last person I really dated, it ended just because it's like we weren't going to get married.
Right.
So there really wasn't this ill will thing. It's like, are there things that happen after the breakup that I think are made him like a piece of shit person? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't have to tell that to somebody. They don't need to know. Because there was something of like, there was this piece of advice I had that said, don't tell somebody about the poor ways you were treated in the past because it will make them think they can also treat you like that and you'll put up with it.
Huh.
Like not directly, but indirectly. It's like, oh, okay. There's not like so much of a backbone to this person in a weird way. Does that make sense?
I find it so hard. Like, I find it hard not to overshare with someone when I'm getting to know them, especially since like I'm a relationship person. So I feel like relationships have like being like a good partner has like defined how I feel about myself.
Okay. Yeah.
Like in my life, I'm like, yeah, I'm a girlfriend. A lot of the times, like I'm like a girlfriend person. So it's always been hard for me in the beginning of relationships not to be like, so this is my past, even though that's not necessary or relevant. Like how important is that?
I mean, it's important. I would say it's important, but it's always like, what's the goal of telling somebody the thing is what I think of.
Yeah.
And I feel a lot of times the not oversharing, but the sharing from the past comes from something happens in your relationship and it's slightly triggering to you on some level. And it reminds you of like, I had an ex that would do this all the time and it drove me crazy, or it made me feel like I wasn't wanted, or he wasn't committed to me, like whatever it is. And so a lot of times I look at it more, if I'm going to tell this thing about the past, is there a reason I'm telling this story, right? And sometimes it might just be like a fun, dummy thing, you know, and not everything has to be so heavy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not anti, but I think it's also, I haven't had a bunch of long, serious relationships like you have. So I look at myself like I don't have a lot of those things.
Yeah.
I have a few of them. Obviously, we all have a few, but I don't have like I was engaged to somebody else.
Right.
Like I don't have that. No, I don't. So.
Right.
But I mean, to each their own, because you know I have herpes, and it's something like when I open up to people about that, it's often one of the first times I'm being super vulnerable, and I find that usually makes them also be vulnerable with me about whatever. So there's also that part to a relationship is when one person kind of breaks the ice of opening up about something, it makes the other person kind of feel comfortable to also open up about their own stuff.
How has having herpes affected dating? Do you feel like people really care?
To be honest, I have not had a lot of problems with it in dating. I had more problems with it when I was younger. And I think that was because, one, I was newer to having it. And two, a lot of people that, you know, I got it at 25 are not really looking for a serious thing. And obviously for someone like taking the risk, being with someone with herpes, kind of already makes the relationship a little more serious.
Right.
It makes it more like, oh, how much do I like this person? It shouldn't, but it often does. And it wasn't all the time. I obviously like still hooked up with people here and there. But I mainly have just found it's an educational issue. Like some people have friends with it and they know. So they're very like, oh yeah, my friend has that. Not a big deal. And then other people I've more been surprised of like, oh, I forgot people know nothing about this. What is more the issue.
What information is lacking?
So because it's classified as an STI, right, you think it's transmitted the same way. And it's not. So like if I have chlamydia and I sleep with someone without a condom, they will get chlamydia.
Right.
Right? Herpes is not like that. I've slept with people with condoms, without condoms, on medication, off medication, and I have never passed it to anybody. Is there a chance I can pass it? Yes, but the chance is so low, and especially if you take medication, that it's like, oh, yeah, this is technically an STI, but it actually is more of a skin condition.
Huh. Okay, interesting, yeah.
But there's something to you can be shedding like 8 days a year. So, like, I got it from someone that had no signs or symptoms. So yes, it is possible to get it from those people, but you're actually more likely to get it from someone who has no idea that they have it.
Is that what happened to you? Like when you found out, did you do the thing of like, what the fuck? How could you not tell me that you had herpes?
See, this I think is almost my problem in dating. I'm almost too calm about stuff.
Really?
And especially when I was young, I was more terrified to ever freak out in front of someone who especially was not my boyfriend yet. Because you're like, hey, I don't want to be a pain in the ass, nag, crazy girl, right?
Right.
You're worried about being the chill girl. And I remember in that scenario, I also was just so like terrified for my own self. But when I told him, he claimed he didn't know that he had it, and then got tested, and he apparently did have it. We didn't really talk about it much, though. It was a very like messy situation, and he turned out not to be a great guy. But yeah, but like that whole navigating thing was just, it was more I was just mad at like myself. I wasn't even really mad at that guy. I was more like, how could you let this happen?
Yeah.
You know? Especially because I wasn't someone who had a lot of sex. Like, it's not that I was opposed, but I've always just been so work driven that guy was like the only guy I had sex with that year.
So you're like, it's you, buddy.
Yeah. Oh, that was the more part that bothered me. He's like, you sure this is from me? I'm like, I am pretty sure. And I even contacted like the guy I was with the year before just to double check if like, hey, don't want to freak you out, but I got herpes. I don't know if you've ever been tested. You might want to get tested because it can be dormant in your body. But when I got my first test, it didn't show in my blood because I didn't have the antibodies yet. And that's what made them say, well, you just got this. And it was a week after I had sex that I had bumps. So I was like, well, makes sense.
Right.
But a lot of people only really have the first outbreak and then never really have an outbreak since.
Do you feel, you're so open about it. Did it take you a while to be open, or were you just kind of, when it happened, were you like, okay, like I want to, I don't know, what kind of person are you?
Yeah, it took me a long time. I think I had it for 3 years before I really told a lot of people or I was public about it. But I only had like maybe 3-4 friends that knew that were very, very close to me.
Right.
And then Ariel Elias is another comic that has it, and she had like jokes about it. And she was one of the first people I told and talked to because I was like, well, I feel she'll also keep my secret because she knows what it's like to have it and get it. But funny, of anyone I would talk to, they always were like, yeah, you're new to this and it's freaking you out right now, and you're gonna get through it and you will eventually just be fine with it, but it's gonna take time. And that's of course the one thing you never want to hear. It's like, it's just gonna take time, but you'll be okay. You're like, all right. How much time?
That's like the breakup advice. People are like, it just takes time. It does just take time to get over a breakup. But that's really the only advice you could ever, that's the only solid advice I've ever gotten about a breakup is like, rejection is God's protection. That's like an AA saying that someone gave me. I love it so much.
Okay.
I'm like, all right, that really stuck with me. And then also just, it literally is just time, because I think about all the times I've been upset about something, and then all right, a year later, who would have thought I felt like this? So
yeah, I was gonna say I got a couple breakup things I could give you.
Yeah.
If you want, from all the books I've read.
All right, let's help these people going through breakups.
Here's a tactical thing you can do.
Okay.
All right. It's from this book, How to Fix a Broken Heart by Guy Finch. So your brain already has like neuro pathways that associate the person you are with all the love and the good feelings. And often when you have a breakup, you just remember the good times. You're like, ugh, I miss them. I miss having, this person around to cuddle with or whatever. So he said, make a list of everything that person did that annoyed you. All your icks, all your annoyances, like no matter how big, how small, and literally train your brain anytime you think of that person to look at the list in your phone. And it will remind you of like, it not all was good. Like, this person was not perfect. Like, I'm okay.
I like that.
And it retrains your brain to be like, screw that. But what's hard is you don't want to do the hating on the person. And that's something from Amy Chan. She has a book, Breakup Boot Camp, which is also well-researched. That's why I liked that one. And she made a great point of, you're with your girlfriends. You're all like, fuck that guy. You're shit-talking your ex. You're actually still in a relationship with that person. And it's keeping that person on your mind. Because the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference.
Yes.
But the hating on the person, as much as we think that's going to help our friend get over it, it doesn't. We're still talking about that guy.
Yeah.
So it's like let's just get to the point we don't talk about this guy anymore.
I feel that that's also like advice that I've wanted. I'm like, I feel my friends going through breakups and I don't know how to help them.
Mm-hmm.
And there is really nothing like you could say to another person. I also like, but hate is in the same way that like narcissists, they feel that love and hate are both equally fueling in the same way. Like it's not healthy to hate on someone obsessively.
Yeah, or I've been there where I was in the mad phase of the breakup.
Yeah.
I'm still thinking about that guy all the time.
Right.
Even though I'm hating on him, and it's like I'm trying to trick myself into getting over it too. But it's like, yeah, at the end of the day, when I found I was really over people was when I just did not think about them anymore.
Yeah.
Didn't want to check their social media. Didn't care what they were doing. And it's like, oh, okay. Now we're here.
What do you tell people that like want to check like the socials, that want to like...
That's my number one piece of advice. You have a breakup, block them on absolutely everything. And it's the one thing people are like, well, you know, it feels mean. It's not mean. It's that gets you over it. And that's been in every breakup book I've ever read. And literally everything, even Venmo. Actually, especially Venmo, okay?
Why Venmo?
Because Venmo is the thing that tells you who they're dating.
Oh, yeah.
So I had that. Funny if I had it, I didn't think to block on Venmo. And then I saw a Venmo pop up on Valentine's Day.
Ugh.
But... yeah, she Venmo'd him for like half the dinner. And I just remember thinking, oh, I'm so happy I'm not in this relationship anymore. Because for me, I'm like, I'm Venmoing you on Valentine's Day? Come on.
Yeah.
Like.
That's the one day.
Yeah, and I'm totally someone that picks up tabs and shit here and there. But Valentine's Day? I'm like, that girl's in hell. Like, good luck.
I definitely, like, with my exes, I feel like I got over them. I knew I was over them when I was like, I feel bad for whoever's with them now. Like, genuinely,
Ooh, yeah.
I'm like, and that's kind of like my friend called me this week, like, crying about a guy. And I felt like that's the only, like, I'm like, you have to feel bad for these girls they're going to be treated like that now. And then her response was like, but they're different, and what if they and it's like people always have the same patterns with how they treat people. So
yeah, and I learned it with an ex, and I would keep checking his page, different ex than the Venmo thing, of when I had an inkling he was dating someone, and I was mainly looking at it to be like, he never posted me on social media, is he gonna post this girl?
Right.
And guess what, at the end of the day he didn't. And it's like, yeah, but that was so much time and energy that I didn't need. Or also, what if he did post that girl?
Yeah.
That's just going to make me feel bad. Why am I looking at this?
Yeah.
So I've been the person too that was like, no, I'm not going to block them, and you know, I might run into them and I want to be nice, and it's like that's not what it's about. It's not mean. That's why you got to do it right away. When you do it later, that's when you feel like you're losing, cuz you go, it's been 3 months. I'm still not over this.
Right.
Now I have to block it. It's like if you blocked it right away, I would even tell the person. I'd just be like, hey, yeah, like I'm bummed this didn't work out. Just a heads up, I'm going to block you on everything just because I don't really need to see you in my feeds and stuff like that. No ill will. I wish you all the best. But just I don't need to see that, and that's going to help me get over it.
I feel like I'm the type of person that when I go through a breakup with someone, we never speak again. Like,
good.
I am like so intense that way that I'm like, oh, I cut them out. Like I won't even like look at them. And I feel like a lot of people can be friends with exes, and I've always been like that. That's not. I feel like once your foundation is romantic, it's always going to have romance in it.
Yeah, I'm not for being friends with exes. Yeah. And it doesn't come from a mean, rude place. But it also comes from I've dated people who were friends with their exes, and I did not like that shit. Yeah. At all. And some people are like, well, you know, they're in their life for a long time, and they still love them and care for them, but it doesn't have to be romantic. And I'm like, at the end of the day, it feels like I will never be the priority, and your ex is still the priority. Yeah. And you're still emotionally involved in your ex, even if it is not from a romantic emotion, it's from a supportive emotion place. And especially if I have a man who I'm like, you're not really being emotionally available for me, but you're being emotionally available for another woman who you dated. No, that's just a no.
And it shows that like your priorities and feelings aren't being prioritized.
Exactly. Yeah. It felt like if we were both drowning, you would save your ex. You wouldn't save me. Yeah. And I'm like, and then I'm going to be like, this is my boyfriend? No.
It's embarrassing.
It's very embarrassing.
That's what I feel like is a big part of it, is like the embarrassment of when you get cheated on is like just as bad as like what happens within the relationship between two people.
Mm-hmm.
So
All of it. Yeah.
I feel like I was cheated on in a relationship, and it actually changed. Like, a lot of comics joke about cheating, especially male comics. They're like, yeah, I cheat and blah, blah. And it created this thing for me where anytime I found out that someone cheated or has cheated, I'm like, I don't like them as a person. Like, I'd be sitting waiting for the next comic, and I'd hear them make a joke about how they cheated. And I'm like, oh, thought they were funny till just now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's interesting the way that, like, when you experience something, it does change the way you feel about everyone else.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and then, you want to get into, like, ethically non-monogamous is now a thing. I guess it's always been a thing, but now it has a more label and is more accepted.
Yeah.
I have plenty of male friends and female friends that kind of were serial cheaters.
Really?
Yeah, and they basically, through whatever therapy and work that they did, realized it's just like they want more than one partner. And how that is it varies. For a lot of men, they're like, I just want to have sex with someone else occasionally. And I'm like, that's not cool with me, but you find a woman that's cool with that, I guess good for you, right?
Yeah.
And the woman feels the same way of, I just want to sleep with other people too. So that's another thing with, like, the whole cheating debate. It brings up, like, what is cheating to you, right? And then at the same time, what is commitment to you? Because we've all had lines that were crossed in relationships that were not technically cheating from a physical standpoint. Like, that's the only boundary that's clear in monogamy.
Right.
And so ethical non-monogamy changes that boundary to, like, it's not necessarily physical, but they'll map out all the other things that count as cheating to them. So it's not like those people don't have it cheating. It's just their cheating's different than our cheating.
Terrible.
Right? Because if I was to ask you, like, what does commitment mean to you outside of monogamy and not sleeping with other people? What do you say to that question?
I mean, I think I would probably say like emotional intimacy as well. So yeah, like, I think like emotional closeness and share and, like, feelings for someone, like, you know what it is.
Right. Being there for somebody,
right.
All the things you do for each other, working as a team. Like, there are many things, but I think a lot of us don't sit and really think about that. It's like commitment, you're not with other people. It's like, okay, aside from that, what do you need in your relationship? Because that kind of feels like number one agreement of we're together, we're not seeing other people.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, what's next? What's the next part of this relationship, you know?
How far, like, into like dating and dates do you think there's a time where people should have sex?
Oh, this is a really, really big debate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my theory is the sleeping on the first time, and that becomes your boyfriend or girlfriend. Can it happen? Yes, but the chances are very rare.
Yeah.
I equate it to, like, winning the lottery. So, because people will knock you if you're like, I think you should wait. And it's like, I'm not saying it can never happen. But looking at my own life and my own patterns and whatever research I've looked at, it's less likely to happen. And I hate the phrase, if you sleep with them too soon, they will lose interest. I think the correct phrasing of that is, if the interest isn't there yet, sleeping with them can derail that. And for both people. Because here's the thing on the female side we never mention with this, right? It's always from the male lens of, like, don't put out for the man.
It is, yeah.
Right? Like, he'll lose interest in you. Now, I have had with people, I slept with them too soon because the sex was not great, and that made me uninterested.
Yeah.
And that turned me off from this person because I did not have any patience. I did not have that emotional investment in them yet. And I was more kind of quick to discard them in that way of, like, oh, that was bad. And it made me, like, not want to see them again. However, everything else was so wonderful and great.
Right.
That had I waited, I would have been more patient with the sex.
I think that there has to be, like, a level of comfortability in a lot of scenarios.
For
and
sure.
then when you don't have that, it can be the difference between, like, having real good sexual chemistry with someone and then just having awkward, like, embarrassing, let's be kind of drunk sex is so like, it's such a stark difference. And
very different.
And whenever you have bad sex, you kind of are thinking, well, that's the sex that I'm going to have with this person. That's our relationship.
Yeah. And there was someone, I just did her podcast, and her theory about waiting, she says about 5th date, because she thinks 3rd date too predictable. Okay.
Oh, okay.
But she made a point of, she said, I actually, the times I've waited, it was hotter because I was anticipating it the whole time. So I think what's hard about this conversation is like, you should want to have sex with this person.
Right.
Like, you should want to have those feelings and obviously be making out and having fun, but just the full-on physical intimacy, I agree. And I think what's changed my view on this, because I used to really not have a hard view of like, when should you wait, blah, blah. I was like, do whatever you want, who cares? But it's more of when I finally dated somebody and was really into them and had sex and had really emotionally connected sex, that changed the game for me. That it made me less interested in casual sex and has made me more frustrated when I didn't wait with other people, because it's not this emotional connection yet, really. Like, literally, like, eye contact and shit. That it's like, I wasn't really doing that with other people.
Yeah.
And it's not that I was having bad sex, but I didn't have that extra level. And, like, since that relationship, that's the thing I've more been chasing. So for me, it's like, that's the thing I want. And I don't know if necessarily waiting or not makes it that level, but it's more being like, that is what I want in my next relationship. And so if I'm having sex with someone at that level and then, you know, I don't hear from them the next day, I'm crushed.
Right.
So it's also a self-protection of like, I want the phone call the next day.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to lie to myself anymore that I don't want the phone call and I don't care and I'm so cool.
Right.
It's like, no, I want the phone call and therefore I'll wait a while because I kind of want to make sure this person is into the relationship as much as I'm into it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, definitely.
So, but again, I don't knock people that do.
Yeah, I definitely, Dan and I, we were like friends for a while, but
that also is different.
We were friends for a long time. So that's like definitely a good thing about it. But we definitely, like, the first time we hung out, we had sex.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I'm a person where I'm like, if we can and we're here, like, why aren't we going to? It's kind of like, we're both here.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we? Unless you don't, the only time I've not done it with someone in where we could is like when I'm just not that attracted to them.
I mean, that's a valid thing too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's specifically a Matchmaker. Maria is a girl I really like. She has a 12 date rule.
Really?
Okay. But hear this out. You go on a date that's longer than hour and a half. That counts as 2 dates. And if you do a phone call that's over 20 minutes, that counts as a date. So when she tells people 12 dates, she's like, you usually hit that in a month. When you really like someone and you're vibing and you're hanging out a lot, like whatever. However, she has I forget what it's called, an exception to the rule of if you have known this person a long time, you don't have to wait that long because you fully know them as a person. And her rule more comes from like, when you're with someone, you should have them like see you on a good day. Like you get good news, say, especially career-wise. Are they supportive in that? Mm-hmm. How do they act when you have a bad day? How do they act when they have a bad day? Right. And things like that. It's like it's not so much about the sexual compatibility or the chase and the losing interest. It's like, no, just really making sure like this person really is the right person for you.
How much my mom always used to say, you always know who someone is like when things aren't going well.
Yes.
And I always like remember that like when something bad, like my mom, she fell and hit her head like a year ago. She's fine, but like the way my partner at the time acted like told me so much about who they were, and it made me think like, okay, I want my next partner to be someone that if they saw my mom and she was a stranger, they would take care of her. And
yep.
It definitely, that's like what I thought, like before I was with Dan, that's what I thought of. Like, I have to make sure that this person like cares about other people.
Yeah.
And you kind of only see that when it's like an emergency situation.
You know, it's funny, that list thing I said with breakups, any of my friends that have done it or when I've done it, there's always an example like that really sticks out. Where you go, remember when I had this bad day and they did not handle it well, or when I needed support on something and they were not there for me. Right. And those are the big things when you talk about commitment. It's like, that's who I want, and that's the things that make me more attracted to you. Right. Because I feel like anyone that marries whoever they marry has the story, but it's the opposite. Yeah. But they're like, this happened and he showed up. He, grabbed me dinner. He was very, how can I help? And wanted to really be there with me in the bad time. Exactly. So yeah, those moments are huge. I completely agree. What do you feel like, so before, oh my God, sorry, I haven't asked you your best advice yet. Oh, no, it's fine. What do you think about, like before a date, like
here's what I'm curious about, because you've done so much research on
Yeah,
like, dating.
I've done way too much.
Okay, two things. One, like before a date on it, like, so say you match on a dating app, right? How often, like, how much do you vet them before you meet them?
So this is the thing that like really varies person to person. Some people will do a phone call vetting.
Yeah.
Of a real quick FaceTime phone call. Let's see if we vibe. I have tried to do that, and it's been a mixed bag of people that are into it, people that are not.
Yeah.
And I find the people that are not into it, it's always because they say, I did that during the pandemic time, and a lot of times the Zoom FaceTime dates feel like an interview. And I'm like, I get that. I don't think it'd feel that way with me, but if it does, it's like, well, then it's a match, right? The vetting thing, I mean, it depends what you're looking for, obviously, but let's say you're looking for a relationship. A lot of men, first of all, don't really update their profile or don't put too much information. So it makes it hard on that standpoint that the only thing I'd say is if you're looking for a relationship, if they have that they're looking for something casual, just immediate no. Another thing I'd say is if in the conversation they quickly get somewhat sexual, even in a joking way, that's probably not someone that's like actually looking to date and really get to know you. But the unfortunate truth with online dating is like, yeah, it's going to be a gamble. And people I know that met their person online, it was either like the lottery winning of they went on 3, 5, maybe even 10 different people they met. And then everybody else, they're like, I went on 100. Like, because it's really a gamble of as if I was going to a bar every weekend and talking to a guy every night in a bar.
Yeah.
Something like that.
What do you think about like, okay, this is my last question.
No, you're
what
good.
do you think about like, how much should people text in between, like,
They meet the first time?
yeah, like what is a normal amount of like texting?
Not a lot, actually.
Not a lot.
Before you ever go out. And I think this is the big mistake women make is we value texting as investment in the relationship.
Yes.
And it's the most basic, easy thing that anybody can do. And they can also be doing it just because they like the attention. So before a first date, I'm not for texting that much. Like really minimal, make the plan, set it up, go on the date. In between dates, that kind of depends on the person. But it's both. It is a sign that someone is interested in you. However, if you take the texting out, you have to look at what else is happening in the relationship. And I had a guy, the last guy I really dated, we were going on a date once a week together. It was so great. I would never hear from him in between.
Huh.
And that was my signal of this man is not actually really interested in dating you, even though he's taking you on a date and you're having this nice time and this wonderful night. It's like this man is not thinking about you at all. So in that scenario, it's like, yeah, cut it.
Right.
But early on, it's like, I call it like a switch that flips of there's kind of that game of will I hear from them and if I hear from them and how much and it's not every day yet, right? And then all of a sudden a switch flips and I almost feel like it's just when one person decides, okay, I really like you, I'm into this, that suddenly I'm getting, hey, every morning. Hey, good morning. I want to talk to you every day. I want to call you every night. And so it's like, yeah, that switch should flip. But before the first time meeting, I think that's worse. You hype it up way more in your head.
Yeah.
And then if you go on the date and it's a dud, you're like, but the texting. The texting was great.
Who had your phone?
Yeah. And I'm like, fuck the texting, dude. Like,
right.
You know?
When you're together, you're not going to be.
Yeah. That's why phone calls are great. It's like, that's really connecting and conversing in a different way. So.
Do you feel like, so what's the best advice you've ever received?
Best advice I ever received in dating or everything?
I don't know. Whatever.
We're on the dating topic. I'll give you the dating one. Mine would probably be, for my own personal reasons, the never let a man tell you he doesn't want you twice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's just like, if he doesn't want you or they don't want you, whoever the person is,
yeah,
don't be coming back around trying to change their mind. It's like, no, their mind's made up. Don't. And also, do you really want to be with someone who basically was like, no.
That's really good advice. It seems like it should be obvious, but like for some reason, people can almost be attracted to that kind of rejection.
For sure. And I think where it's harder is you were dating and they don't want you anymore.
Right.
That's where it's harder because you're like, but you did.
You're like, what did I do?
Yeah.
I've been in that situation where I'm just trying to figure out like what it is about me that I need to change to please that person, because at one point they liked me. And the thing is that like you can't chase that.
Yeah.
But I feel like in my experience, it's always just not been that wasn't the right person if that was something that they said to me.
No, I agree. I'd say general advice. I'm like, there's always a few things, but one thing I really liked was, this just shows how much of a business mind I have. My dad actually told me, he was like, people in life, you should look at them like your life is a bank account. And are they adding to your bank account at all, or are they just taking from your bank account? And it doesn't literally mean money. It means your energy, your time, and we've all had those friends, not even people we're dating, but just friends where you're like, we're great friends and blah, blah. And then you suddenly realize like, oh, they always hit me up to do something for them. And then when I need something, they're not really there.
Yeah.
Or they're never thinking to help me out the way I've helped them out.
It's kind of like if it doesn't serve you.
Yeah.
You need to get it's when I think of specific people like that, it becomes so clear that like I don't need them in my life when I think of certain people that way. But also, it's interesting if you want to be honest with yourself about like how much you're taking from someone too.
Yeah, very much. Oh, I just thought of another one.
What is it?
This is a quick one. This actually was also from my dad. This is specifically women in dating, but anybody. You don't need a reason to feel uncomfortable. If you feel uncomfortable in whatever situation you're in, get out of that situation. And a lot of times this more comes from like literally physically being in a room or with someone and you're like, I don't feel safe. I don't know what it is, but something in my gut is like, get out. Red light sirens are on. And it's like, listen to that thing. Right. And a lot of times women feel bad of like, oh, I don't want to be mean and rude. It's like, that's not about being mean or rude. Just all you have to say is, I'm not comfortable with whatever's happening and I got to go. But I've had that voice pop in my head a few times where I'm just like, ooh, something's not right.
What do you say if you're in the middle of a date, you want to leave, and it's like...
a date?
Or any... I guess it's not always...
I'm like, I've been lucky if I haven't had it on a date, but I actually always bring cash with me on a date to be able to put down if I'm like, I got to go.
Nice.
And I think that also is a reassuring thing of I'm like, you have that option. I could leave and I won't feel bad. Here's my half. I'm out.
I feel like that when I'm like out with friends.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't wait for us to all have our cards, splitting up the bill.
Yeah, right? Yeah, sometimes it's just a social thing. You're like, I'm tapped out. Don't have the energy.
Like my energy bar is depleted.
Yeah, but I'm basically like, yeah, I don't have that fear of like walking away. I'm just like,
do you think it's healthy, like in relationships, to be like pooping and farting in front of each other? Like, at what point are you like, okay, I'm actually a human and I do this?
Interesting. I feel like this is a very gender role thing a little bit. I feel like you're going to be at the point it's like, obviously, they've heard me fart, one slipped up, or, you're sharing a bed every night. There'll be a slip up sometime. The pooping thing, for me, it doesn't really bother me. But I feel like, yeah, there's kind of a courtesy, a little bit of like, shut the door. But like, if I got to come in the bathroom and get something, also don't be weird about it.
Right.
But there's a little bit of like, keeping the romance alive a little,
Yeah.
But like my family's very close and we're 5 and we often share one hotel room if we go away.
Right.
And it's like, I'm naked in the shower. My mom uses the bathroom. This one comes in. And that's depends on the person, depends on the family. But I'm very like, whatever.
I too am very open about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I always like to pull a tarot card at the end of my podcast.
Oh, shit. Okay.
And this deck is my favorite deck. And I actually don't bring it in to do podcasts because I like it so much.
Okay.
But I was like, and I collect tarot decks. So I have a bunch. But I'm like, I'm going to bring the good deck today.
Okay. All right. I'm a little anxious.
You're anxious?
I never get anxious. And now I'm anxious. I don't know. No. I'm like, Natalie's a witch. I don't know.
I'm trying to be. Okay. I guess... I don't know. So I used to pull a card basically like, oh, what is this?
Yeah.
Like, does this align with like the podcast? But now I kind of am like, then I thought like, oh, should I pull one for the guest?
Okay. All right.
And then I'm like, I kind of just approach tarot cards in general about like, what do I need to hear right now? So like, I don't know.
It's most people with psychic powers.
Yeah. It's like, what do we
I would like if the psychic tells me what I want to hear.
Yeah. Like, what do we need to hear today? Like, why?
Okay. All right.
All right, so I guess that's the deck. We'll pull a card, and this hour went by so quickly.
Oh, this was so fun.
Okay. Oh my God, that is crazy. It is the
what
love,
is it?
It is the 2 of Cups is like a love card.
I'm in love. I'm gonna be in love.
It's kind of like it's like very like relationshipy card. I will read you from the book because I'm not that good of a witch yet, but it is
Hold it up for everybody.
Two of Cups, connection, love, romance, which is all we've talked about.
Yeah, it is.
It says,
look at that.
Say hello to the much adored Two of Cups. So when this card appears, you can anticipate new love to be heading your way. Ooh. And yes, this usually means romance, but sometimes it points to the birth of a dear and lasting friendship. Oh, fun.
Maybe it's us.
Yes. Either
Watch
way.
out, Dan.
Either way, the connection between you will be pure, honest, and solid. Open your heart and get ready. What a nice card.
Okay, look at that.
Okay.
Look at me.
Thank
Opening
you.
my heart.
Erica, where can people find you? And where can they listen to your podcast?
So if you want to watch on YouTube, Shooters Gotta Shoot is on YouTube, also wherever you listen. And Finding Mr. Hyde is mostly just audio, so you could look that up. And I'm at Sperica, SPERICAA, for all my stuff.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and as always, you can find us on YouTube, youtube.com/Natalie Cuomo, Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, and Patreon. We'll see you next week.
And
Bye.
Natalie will be on my show soon.
Yes.
Bye.